All right, so let's take a look at the sum and difference trig identities. I'm going to do a little introduction. Here we have a list of equations, and you will notice that it looks very complicated, but instead of thinking of it as A and B, I'm going to think of it as first and second. So let's do the top one as an example. Sine of two angles being added is equal to sine of the first one times cosine of the second one plus cosine of the first one times sine of the second one. Sine A minus B is the exact same thing, except there's a minus in the middle. Cosine A plus B is cosine of the first, cosine of the second, minus sine of the first, sine of the second. Cosine A minus B is the exact same thing, except there's a plus in the middle. You'll notice for cosine, the sign flips. And then we have tan A plus B, which is tan A plus tan B over 1 minus tan A times tan B. And then for tan A minus B, it's the exact same thing except the signs flip. Now it's tan A minus tan B divided by 1 plus tan A tan B. Make sure you have these written down. You won't have to memorize these like you had to memorize the other two identities. Make sure you have it handy though. Make sure it's on a sticky note or an index card or somewhere that you can pull it up once you're doing these types of questions. So we're going to do our first example. Cosine of 75 degrees. Now we're doing sum and difference formula, and we're trying to find an exact value of cosine of 75. So I have to sit there and I have to think what two numbers that I already know cosine and sine of, what two angles can I get to add up to 75 so I can use these equations to get an exact value. So that is my first step. Use two angles from the unit circle to add up to the given angle. The given angle is 75. So 75 can be 30 plus 45, or you can reverse it, 45 plus 30, or you can even use subtraction, 120 minus 45. To me, the easiest thing to use is going to be the first one. So based on the sum and difference that you choose, you're going to pick the equation. Now we're doing cosine, and I'm going to use one of the adding ones. So I'm going to use cosine A plus B, which means I'm going to do cosine of the first, cosine of the second, minus sine of the first times sine of the second. Now you're going to substitute the values and simplify using the unit circle. So because I chose 30 and 45, I'm going to have cosine 30 times cosine 45 minus sine 30 times sine 45. Cosine of 30, according to the unit circle, is root 3 over 2. Cosine of 45, according to the unit circle, is root 2 over 2. Minus sine of 30, according to the unit circle, is a half. And sine 45 is root 2 over 2. So now we're just going to multiply these and leave the subtraction there. Root 3 times root 2 is root 6. 2 times 2 is 4. So we end up with root 6 over 4 minus 1 times root 2 is root 2. So you end up with root 2 over 4. When you subtract it, you end up with one fraction, which is root 6 minus root 2 over 4. Keep in mind, with the square roots, you can't subtract them. So root 6 minus root 2 is not equal to root 4. You just leave it there as root 6 minus root 2. Also, you're not going to use a calculator to get the decimal form of this, because usually we ask for exact value, which means you leave it in the fraction form with the radical. So here we have another example, cosine of negative 15 degrees. Now, as you guess, you might have to subtract to get this. So my first step is to use two angles from the unit circle to add up to the given angle. I am going to use 30 minus 45. You could use 45 minus 60. You could use 120 minus 135. There's a lot of different combinations you could use. They should all give you the correct answer if they subtract to give you -15. So based on the sum or difference you choose, pick the equation. We're obviously picking a difference formula, so I'm going to do cosine of A minus B. So let's substitute the values and simplify using the unit circle. So for this particular problem, I chose to use 30 minus 45. So that's cosine of the first angle, 30, cosine of the second angle, 45, plus sine of the first angle, 30, sine of the second angle, 45. So this answer is going to look very similar to the previous answer. We have root 6 over 4 plus root 2 over 4, which gives me root 6 plus root 2 over 4. Here we have another example, sine of 345. So use two angles from the unit circle to add up to the given angle. So here we have 300 plus 45, we have 45 plus 300, we have 120 plus 225. I'm sure there's other combinations that you could find. I try to choose the simplest combination possible. So based on the sum and difference that you choose, pick the equation. We're obviously using an additional formula, or I should say an addition formula for sine. So we're going to have sine A plus B is sine of the first, cosine of the second, plus cosine of the first, sine of the second. So let's substitute our values and see what we get. So I chose to use 300 plus 45, so I'm going to take sine of 300, cosine of 45, plus cosine 300 times sine of 45. So according to the unit circle, sine of 300 is negative root 3 over 2, cosine of 45 is root 2 over 2, and then we have plus cosine of 300 is a half, sine of 45 is root 2 over 2. This gives me negative root 6 plus root 2 over 4, or you can reverse the order and it'll be the same thing. It'll be root 2 minus root 6 over 4. All right, so in this example, we have it in radians. We just want to do one real quick with radians. You don't have to figure out what to subtract this time. It's actually given. They want us to find sine of pi over 6 minus pi over 4. So we don't need to figure anything out. We're going to use the two angles from the unit circle, and this is already given. And then we're going to use this to determine which sum or difference formula I'm going to choose. We're doing sine of something minus something. So I'm going to do sine A minus B. Then we're just going to substitute the values and simplify using the unit circle. So we have sine of pi over 6, cosine of pi over 4, minus cosine of pi over 6, sine of pi over 4. So as you see here, we're going to have root 2 over 4 minus root 6 over 4. And that is our answer. That will be it for this video. On the